The more things change, the more they stay the same. This is the Focus Group.
This is the Focus Group with Business Insiders Tim Bennett and John Nash.
I fought worse monsters than you for years in Hollywood. I know how to win the hard way.
We're all business, except when we're not.
Don't f with me, fellas! This ain't my first time at the rodeo.
So, happy 2021. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We are in our, I think, if I'm doing the math right, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13th year, John, or 14th year? 2008. What's my math? 8 and 8 would be 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. 13th year?
Shall I get the abacus?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Sometimes I say 14th, but I don't know. Anyway, we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, we have.
Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. So thank you to all of you that have joined us or have found us along the way, along the years. And welcome to 2021. I can't believe we've reached this. I was thinking back the other day, John. We took
That's always dangerous in my book, thinking back, right?
Well, we took a well-deserved. We usually don't take time off. We usually try to pre-record or do a show. And for the first time, we took some time off. And I was trying to think of. Somebody posted something and said, we are closer to 2050 than we are to 1990.
Oh, boy, that's a downer.
Well, I thought so, too. But I tried to think of did you ever think when you graduated college or, I don't know, in 2000, when 2000 was such a huge milestone when we rang in 2000, what you would be doing in 2020? Or
2020 seemed like,
yeah. I don't know if I would ever predict it.
2020 seemed like such a distant thing. And do you remember where you were in the year 2000 when Y2K hit?
Yes, I was in Philadelphia, and my friend Ricky, we were at his house. My friend Rich, Brian, Matt, we all thought the whole world was going to collapse and computers weren't going to be able to flip over and digital clocks weren't going to be able to find the two. And so we were all in the streets of Philadelphia on Broad Street and watching and waiting to see if the clocks would turn because they had this big digital clock on Broad Street in Philadelphia. And we were all in the streets watching and very anticlimactic when it went from a 1 to a 2.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember where we were by any chance? We were out in Palm Springs. This is actually before we owned our house upstate, and we were thinking at the time that, hey, we love Palm Springs so much that we should turn this into a destination we fly to on weekends. And this tells you how different.
I know a lot of people who did that too.
And this tells you
from
how
the East Coast because it's so easy.
Yeah, the planes are like taxis, and this tells you how far away from 2000 we've come, because merely a year later was 9/11, and that completely changed air transportation. And now here we are in 2020, 2021 with the pandemic. And, I read a statistic that in 1 year's time, 21 years of airline growth has been wiped out in terms of passenger loads and the size of the fleets that are flown. That's
whoa. What was that stat again?
In 2020, in 1 year, in 9 months' time, or since the lockdown, and here we are now. The airlines lost about 20 to 21 years of growth in terms of passengers and aircraft. That's a pretty astounding number. So here we are, Y2K. Are we going to be able to get money out of the bank? Are we? And really, now in 2021, it's like, I wonder when we'll be able to sit in a movie theater again and not worry about it, or go to a sports game, or and we know that's going to happen at some point, but it's going to be a while. So odd, and are you you and I have always kind of bantered about resolutions. Did you make any, like even a little silent one to yourself on New Year's Eve?
I make the same one every year.
Which is?
I'll lose weight, which we're going to talk about later in the show, because one of your favorite authors, we've had him on the show, Charles Duhigg.
Yeah, love him.
Talks about don't make a goal, but make a plan, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the takeaway. So we'll discuss that later. But yeah, I need to get my health in order, but I started that earlier. You always say that you and I talk about resolutions, or when we talk about a reset, we usually think about it like a school year back in September.
Labor Day, yeah.
But I've been trying to get my, many people know from, we've talked about it before, I've been on high blood pressure medicine since my early 20s. And so I'm trying to get them regulated. And so I think part of that is also part of my health. So I'm trying to figure that out. But I've noticed I didn't talk to you about this, but whatever I'm on now is making me a little bit woozy. So if you need anything, ask now, ask away.
Because the pills might, yeah.
Being forgetful.
I made I kind of made a somewhat resolution. I was watching an interview with a Olympic athlete who had been destined to compete in the Summer Olympics, I think. The one that it was moved, and the disappointment, the years of training, and she simply said, I've just come to a new mindset that the things in my life that I have control over, I will exert that control and I will do my best to use that time. And she said, walks, being outside, training, cooking. Like she had a very a small sphere of things that she knew she had direct control over, and everything else was up to the world and to chance. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to make that little thing that if I have control over it, I'm not going to blame someone else. I'll exert the will and get it done or whatever. I don't know if that's any different than my years past resolutions, but it's pretty close.
So only worry about what you have direct control over?
Yeah, exactly.
Or only manage what you have direct control over?
Manage what I have direct control over. However, do you know what spun my weekend? And here we are, like on YouTube today. You can see us, and while you might watch us, you might want to be watching what's going on in Congress, right? Because it's January 6th.
For the jackasses.
But over the weekend, Bob and I did a beautiful walk on a section of a new rail trail we have upstate, and it goes in. The cool thing about rail trails is they parallel roads sometimes, but they're set back and they run along streams, and it's scenery I've never seen in our county before. And we had a delightful walk and saw some puppies and people walking dogs.
One of those rails to trails that's asphalt, so you could ride a bike.
It's got portions of asphalt, but then they do something called it's a coach path. It's really finely ground gravel, so it's like you could ride on it, no problem. But it's like a dirt thing, but it's firmly packed.
So you wouldn't take your road bike out?
Oh yeah, I've been on several sections on my bike. Rides perfectly. It's almost like asphalt. It's just crushed stone. We're walking along. We get back to the house, and I'm having some tea or something, and I turn on the news, which was a big mistake, and I see that Ted Cruz is leading a objection to the Electoral College count, which is a formality. I mean, Pence opens an envelope and says, 1 for you, 2 for you, 2 for you, 1 for you. And it spun my weekend, and I was angry. I was in a funk until Sunday night when the Washington Post dropped that recording of the call that the president had with the Secretary of State of Georgia. Then my mood improved. But it led me to go down the road of the following. You and I have been privy to we've either been privy to private conversations, or we've been in situations where we shouldn't have said what we said out loud because of the people who are around. So it's a good little business lesson here that never assume that what you're saying is not going to be recorded or thrown back at you at some point, right?
And you're never off record.
You're never off better. Thank you. You said it way better than I did. You're never off record, right?
Yeah, it's never off the record. Hey, is this off the record? Oh, yes. And no, it's not.
What was that? You had a story. We both have stories. One, though, was around an auto show. Was it Chicago or something? And you and
there was so we're flying back from New York. So there was a flight that went from New York City to Detroit, and it was around auto show season. And you should never, first of all, it's a lesson you and I've learned. Whenever you're flying or you're on a train and you're leaving New York particularly, or any place, quite frankly, keep your mouth shut. Don't talk business on your phone, because we hear it all the time. You used to hear it from people on trains, or when you could talk on your phone on a plane. But there was somebody that was jabbering away to a coworker on the airplane, and sitting in front were two journalists from the Automotive News in the two front seats, and they were gossiping about the company and who was being fired and who was in trouble and what was happening. And these two journalists were diligently writing down everything. And then that Monday came out in the Automotive News, and nobody could figure out where it came from. And then they kind of figured, based upon some of the insider information, they kind of led it back and figured that somebody must have overheard a conversation somewhere and figured it happened. You lead it back, but came from this conversation that they overheard on the airplane that the journalists must have been on when they were flying back to Detroit. And so you have to be careful. I think something happened to you on wasn't
Oh,
it a Hertz rent-a-car bus or
Chicago.
something?
Yeah, we were. I was back in my first agency days, and we had just left a client and had given a presentation. And I was, I think I was 28 at the time, and full of myself, and in my little suit and tie, and I'm doing my business trip and getting ready to get on the shuttle. And I was talking very loudly about how stupid I thought many of the people in that meeting were, including the owner of the company or the chairman. And this guy is sitting just kind of staring at me and my business partner and doesn't say anything until we pull up in front of the Delta terminal, or maybe it was American Airlines, but he leans forward, he says, "Excuse me." He said, "I'm the personal assistant to," and he named the person. And he said, and he just kind of cocked his head. He goes, "You have to be careful," And the implication in his facial expression was he wasn't going to say anything. But
I don't disagree with you.
But I got off the bus and I just stood there, and it pulled away. And the doors closed, and my business partner looks at me and goes, "Wow!" And we both learned a very valuable lesson: keep your mouth shut. You just keep your mouth shut.
My other favorite one, and we won't go into the strong detail, but the time I was at that cocktail party, and then that guy announced that he handled all the marketing for Subaru.
You were sitting right next to him,
and worked for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just at your agency, and I was like, "What?" I said, "Who are you?" Remember that one?
Yes,
that was
I
one
do.
of my all-time favorites. People's mouths were on the floor. It's like, do you not know who you're talking to?
Yeah,
It was hilarious.
And actually, the wonderful part about that story is you do many voices associated with that, including the host of that party.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought I was on candid camera. It was one of those things where I thought, this is a setup. I just can't believe this guy is saying this. I'm like, "You do what?" I handle the Subaru account. You do for who? For Moon City Production. You're kidding me.
You let him. Come on. You did the classic thing of how much rope do I have? I have 12 feet.
Do?
I'm going to let it go way up.
Yeah. What accounts you? Yeah. Let him go. Let him go. And then he left the party. He didn't even stay for dinner. He was mortified. Of course.
Wouldn't you be?
He's a liar. Anyway, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
I have two caught my eyes, and one is a sentimental thing, and the other is just really a quick hit kind of joke thing. But the first one, do you happen to remember when PBS aired Tales from the City?
Yes.
It was originally a British production. I mean, it's American actors, but it was done by the UK Channel 4. And this is 1993. Well, the actor who played Michael Tolliver, also known as Mouse in the original Tales of the City, passed away recently at the age of 55. He had pneumonia, so I don't think it was COVID-related, and he died at his home in Oxfordshire, England. And his name is Marcus D'Amico. And it just kind of made me feel sad because, 55 is very young to me, and I thought he played a perfect Michael Tolliver. I mean, if you've ever read Tales of the City, or you know the book very well, I just think he was so perfectly cast. And again, this is 93. Representations of LGBTQ individuals on television in any capacity was limited. And here we had Tales of the City, right, taking place in San Francisco. And one of our favorite scenes with Michael Tolliver, this actor, Marcus D'Amico, who played Mouse, was when he goes to an underwear contest in the meatpacking, or the Castro, and he has to dance on stage to win this contest. And it was very funny, but it was a well-done series. As I said, 93. Olympia Dukakis plays Mrs. Madrigal. Laura Linney played Marianne Singleton, the kind of focus of the story. But it was just one of these things that Bob and I would watch every week religiously for like 6 weeks when it was airing. And we loved it, and we rewatched it about 2 or 3 times. So that's the first thing that caught my eye, was that he had passed away. Do you remember the show?
Yes, I do. No, it was groundbreaking at the time, and as you said, exactly, there was so little or no representation at the time that it was such a big deal, and it was appointment TV.
And by the way, he's straight, but he just embodied the role so perfectly, and that aw shucks Midwest guy that ends up moving to the Bay Area. Subsequent Tales of the Cities didn't have him in it, and other cast members were not in it, but this is the one that really struck with us. And by the way, it was Tales of the City that forced a huge debate on the Senate or the House floor about funding for PBS. How dare we show these depraved people on TV? So let's not forget that we haven't really come that far.
Yeah.
We have and we haven't. This other one, I was listening to NPR and an author was talking about a piece that she wrote, and then she idly said that over the New Year's Eve holiday, she was going to get a Trump pinata, and everybody in the neighborhood was going to come over and take a whack at it. Now, I'm driving the car, and I almost drive off the road. I'm laughing so hard, and I go on.
How did I miss this?
This is, Tim, this is 20... Let's see. This is $26.99 at $26.99 at Amazon. There are a bunch of them, but this one's got that nasty face. If you're watching on YouTube,
Another thing we missed.
how do we miss the Trump pinata? The one that I should have included the graphic that shows a little rectangle in the back of his head that says "Fill here," and you lift it up, and there's a hole where you put whatever in. So here's my thing. And it says popular among. It says Trump pinata, apparently very popular with kids and adults. What would you fill? Like, what would you put in your Trump pinata if you had this down at the beach, for example?
Oh, I don't know. Jolly Ranchers, Sour Heads. I don't know. What would you put in there?
I'd put empty candy wrappers because he ate them all. You get nothing. Crack. Either you're with me or you're against me. The head breaks open and nothing comes out.
That's a good one. What would you put in? What would you put in a Trump pinata?
Yeah, empty. For me, it would be empty stuff or pennies. You put a lot of pennies in there. Because they're annoying.
What a great idea! I can't believe maybe somebody did think of this earlier, but boy, I bet that's a quick hit. That's a good one. I would have that would have been a good one for us to just get out, make some money.
Well, I went on to Etsy as well, and there's a lot of artists who have made full-bodied Trump pinatas. Some are very round; they look like blimps with little orange heads, but that one, the ugly face one, was so. Those are the two things: a sad passing, way too early for that talented actor, but he will always be, for me, the anchor of Tales of the City, and of course the Trump pinata.
God, I love the Trump pinata. How do I miss it?
I know, Tim. We're missing everything left and right.
Jeez, I struggled to find, and I don't know why, because I usually find all kinds of stories, and I will say I found one that sent me down the rabbit hole about pasta, and it ended up being.
What was it about? How they make it, or you know?
Well, it was almost 20 pages long.
I'm surprised you went down that rabbit hole. I'm surprised.
And then I just said, there's no way I can distill this down to even 10 minutes. So I won't even go. But it was a pasta story, which was, somewhat interesting. But I found this one. So the headline is next up for the Four Seasons Total Landscaping, a surf and turf gala to raise money for ALS awareness. So everybody knows about the Four Seasons Total Landscaping
Rudy
building,
Giuliani fiasco.
Which is in North Philly, and they finally did come clean. Somebody from the Trump administration did come clean that they did, in fact, confuse it with the Four Seasons Hotel, which is probably 10 miles and a world away from the actual Four Seasons in Philadelphia. And no lie, across the street, John's going to show a graphic, but across the street from a crematorium and 2 doors down from an adult bookstore, you can buy dildos and all kinds of things.
On the camera, like the crematorium's here, I'm circling it. The
dildo shop is right.
It's either right here or up here, right here.
Right, and there's a couple of other wholesale places. I mean, this is a world away from where the Four Seasons is in Philadelphia. Just driving there, I can't believe someone didn't say, "Oh my God, I can't believe we're going here." This is not certainly where the Four Seasons is, because the Four Seasons is magnificent in Philadelphia. Probably
one of the nicest properties. Yeah.
And it starts at, I think, 40 stories up in the air in the Comcast towers. I mean, it's incredible. So anyway, so there's a guy named Kaplan, and you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge?
I do, yeah.
Or for ALS. And so his job was to raise money and try to figure out how to raise money. I'll say it wrong, but it's the amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS.
Very close.
Disease.
Yep, very close.
And so in 2016, for example, he traveled all 50 states, did the Ice Bucket Challenge. He raised over $100,000 for ALS awareness. He also did the buckets. He did salmon heads in Alaska, steak and chili in Texas, did certain things with the buckets. And so when this whole thing blew up about the ridiculousness of doing this press conference for the claiming fraud for the election at this Four Seasons Total Landscaping in Philly, he said, I'm going to capitalize on this newfound landmark in Philly. And called him up and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a surf and turf gala for ALS to raise money for ALS?" And they said, "Sure." And apparently merchandise has been flying off the shelf there. There's all kinds of great T-shirts and things, and people have been stopping by. Apparently, the guy at the adult bookstore, old cranky guy, he's in his 70s or 80s. He's upset because people still call there to this day asking if Rudy's there.
He's in the back room.
Imagine, is Rudy there? Is
He's
Rudy
in the
there?
back room.
People stop off the traffic. They had to have cops one day direct traffic. People getting the pictures taken in front of the places. So it's right off 95. So they're going to do outside. They're going to do this gala and they're going to raise money. The tickets are $125. It's going to be May 8th, and they're going to raise money for ALS, Hope Loves, Peter Freight's Family Foundation, and Pat Quinn's Find Your Smile Foundation. So he's grouped all of these nonprofits together because none of them were allowed to raise any money in 2020 because of the event. And so he wants to make good out of their newfound fame. And he said, we're very serious. These are all terminal illnesses. He said, we're going to take advantage of this company's newfound fame. He said, we take safety very seriously because these are terminal illnesses. So they're going to have all the protocols in place. And he says, we're going to have a little fun with it as well. You can get tickets at surfandturf.fun. They're going to go on sale shortly. They already have interest. People are flying in from all over the country. They've got people from California, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Florida already coming in. So sounds like a lot of fun. He goes, we also want to let people know that good things happen in Philadelphia, despite what the president says. But it's not a political event.
What a
just
fun
thought
way
that
to
was fun.
turn that around, to take that destination, Four Seasons landscaping, and use it for something good, as opposed to a press conference in front of a garage door. And yeah, my God, that is a good. I like that one.
Yeah, I thought that was.
You know
I
what they
thought
need
was-
at that fundraiser? That's going to make that thing a hit. They're going to need a Trump pinata. They're going to need
Hey, maybe the focus group could donate one.
And we should put something in there. It would be like, you know what? Tim, I just had a thought. Don't they do things where they airdrop stuff over North Korea all the time, like iPods and like, guess what you're missing on the West? Like, imagine putting some kind of subversive messaging in the Trump pinata head. So it explodes and there's little candies, but they're wrapped with almost like fortune cookie type things. Like, the Southern District of New York is going to get you. There's lawsuits coming.
Maybe 11,780 ballots.
What an odd number. I mean, you couldn't have just said, 12,000. You had to say 11,780. Yeah, which is one more than we had. But we won them all anyway by 100,000. Well, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Speaking of odd days, our business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
This is a good one, I think, you found here.
John, I'm glad you think so, because I'll tell
I
you
do. I like that. I think this guy's funny.
Well, I know you like him because I struggled. And I've said this before, I've struggled. And there's sometimes we have a lot of business birthdays, and other times I struggle to not repeat them. Here are my choices today. Eric Trump, this January 6th. Eric Trump or Anthony Scaramucci.
B.
And I know you like the mooch, so I picked Anthony Scaramucci. What were we going to say about Eric Trump? What could you possibly say about Eric Trump?
That's true.
So Anthony Scaramucci, born today, January 6th. He was the White House communications director from July 21st to July 31st for 10 days.
Only
He
10.
had the record for the shortest tenure. There was also somebody in the Reagan administration that had a short tenure of 10 days as well. Prior to the White House communications, director of communications, he was an American financier. And he worked for Goldman Sachs, Skybridge Capital, another company called Oscar Capital Management, and a number of other different finance companies. And along the way, went to Tufts and Harvard, was a big supporter of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. I didn't realize that.
Where did you get that from? Like Wikipedia or something? Or
Yeah, in his bio.
okay, no, yeah.
He has a pretty long long bio. He was very much a supporter of it says he overlapped college with Barack Obama, Rod Rosenstein, and Neil Gorsuch.
Interesting.
Of all things,
Okay, yeah.
in law school at Harvard Law. And then he got out of school, went to Goldman Sachs, then he worked at Oscar Capital, then he went to a company called Skybridge Capital. And then he worked on the Mitt Romney campaign. And then after that, he had also worked on the Scott Walker campaign, the Jeb Bush campaign. Also was a supporter of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So he was, I guess, all over the map a little bit. And then eventually landed on the Donald Trump campaign and worked as a liaison when he was elected and was president-elect, and was trying to get a position within the Trump administration. But Rance Priebus, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Sean Spicer did not want him on at all because they thought he had too many ethical issues, they thought, tied to money because of all his high finances. Now,
that's like
imagine of all things.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And they said, so there was actually a story that CNN did that, and this goes back to your issue about you never know who's listening and being on the record or off the record. But there was some discussion that there was a $10 billion Russian investment fund that Scaramucci was involved with. And Priebus and Spicer were all spun up about it. And CNN leaked the story. They couldn't really substantiate the stories. They didn't really publish it, but it went online. Scaramucci went crazy. Somebody had actually had published it, and he was going to go after them, contacted the FBI. They ended up posting it in the New Yorker. The story leaked, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he gets fired 10 days later because they thought he was a loose cannon because he was out running his mouth. And so, of all things, you imagine Trump saying you were
a loose cannon. Yeah, it's the proverbial pot calling the kettle black, right? I mean, you can't even make that up.
Right, which I thought was hilarious. So the new chief of staff Kelly had let him go, John Kelly. So then after he let him go, Scaramucci said that even though he was a registered Republican, he could not support Trump because Trump, he thought, had lost his mind. So he started a super PAC, which was going to help support, which was a group of Republicans that were going to support Joe Biden. So he actually worked pretty hard to endorse Joe Biden and work to support Joe Biden, and then in fact has now said that he's been on a number of shows where he actually talked about all the craziness of Donald Trump. Then there were some other little kind of odd facts here. They said when he was at Skybridge, was a company that he was part owner in, he paid $100,000 to have the logo of Skybridge placed in the film Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. And he also paid to have 2 cameos in that film.
You know, the interesting thing about that is if you're going to ever do product placement, which is what he was doing, right? Like he was doing some, you would have done it in the first one because no one remembers the second Wall Street movie, right? The first one's the one, greed is good, the whole bit. Who remembers the second one?
Yeah. I didn't. That's what I was, when I even saw that, I thought, And then in January 2019, it was announced that he was a participant in the reality show Celebrity Big Brother. I didn't know if it was. I don't watch that show, so I don't know. Did you watch Celebrity Big Brother?
No. You were a Big Brother fan for a while, weren't you?
Yeah, but not the celebrity one.
No, I never saw the celebrity one. So that's a news to me too. That's Then
he was involved in some restaurants in Manhattan, and then he went to Tufts, as I mentioned. He tried to get on the board at Tufts. A bunch of alumni went crazy, kicked him off, and or they didn't want him on or something. I mean, there was all kinds of controversy. And so anyway, it's his birthday, and happy birthday to the Mooch. But,
nicely done. I always think he's funny.
Yeah, I know he is funny, and it's interesting. He's 57 today, so he's our age. He's a contemporary, right?
Yeah.
And when I look at him, I thought he's kind of the promise of what you and I initially thought when Trump was elected.
Yeah. A straight talker, a straight shooter,
right,
a businessman, right?
Right. And if Trump had been managed correctly, or I don't even know, I can't even say it with a straight face. But here was somebody like Scaramucci who felt, if you do good business, you could work with both sides and compromise and get things done. And that's kind of where Scaramucci was coming from. But it just was never going to work with the Trump administration. He just never, that sort of way of doing business wasn't going to work. So he just wasn't going to fit in there.
So
he was too middle of the road for the polarization that was part of that administration.
Do you remember early on in the administration, we would hear things like Paul Ryan used to go down to the White House and give the president PowerPoint presentations about how government worked and about the Constitution, right? Well, given everything that's happened, I used to think that was kind of a crazy thing. And now it's clear to me that Paul Ryan went down and probably gave those PowerPoints because he had to.
Yeah, we have 50 states.
We have 3 branches of government. There's the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. I mean, I don't even know if you could do that. Anyway, good.
Well, they said, one of my favorite ones, I should send you the article. They had to give him a presentation on all the military bases we had around the world and the countries that were in them.
Wow.
And the leases we had with the various countries, and help him pronounce. They were talking about Nepal and Bhutan, and he was calling them nipple and button, and then didn't understand why the British had Diego Garcia, and why we were there, and how come we were leasing it. I mean, anyway.
It's almost over. Take a deep breath. And we're going to do that. Exactly. We're going to take a deep breath. Excellent business birthday. Some fun caught your eyes. Hey, we're going to take a brief break here. And when we return, we do have a shop talk that focuses on an author we had the pleasure of interviewing several years ago on SiriusXM. It's Charles Duhigg. And his book at the time was called The Power of Habit. So that's a little tip off here. So stay with us and we're going to be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with The Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Focus Group. We hope your 2021 is off to a good start. Tim Bennett here with my good friend and host, Mr. John T. Nash. Be sure to follow along with us at focusgroupradio.com. You can find all of our media housed there, and all of our social media is branded Focus Group Radio. As John mentioned, Charles Duhigg was a guest on our show.
On Festivus.
On Festivus. A few years back when we were on SiriusXM, and he made an impression on us. He was one of the few authors that came prepared, and we used to like to say came to play. He has some great insight, and John had found this article titled How to Start 2021 Off Right with Charles Duhigg. And he has a podcast. And did you listen to the whole podcast, John? I did not.
No, because I had read the book. I read Power of Habit, and I've actually referred to it a couple times. So I didn't listen to it.
And what was the book is The Power of Habit, why we do what we do in life and business. Mm-hmm. And the podcast, I think, is you can find it wherever you find your podcast. It's called The Upgrade. But this particular article took three of what they thought were the three most important takeaways from the podcast. Did you agree with the 3 takeaways, or what was your synopsis of
well generally, and to put this all into the broader perspective, Duhigg in The Power of Habit suggests that there are many science-backed strategies that we can use to enhance habit formation or to transform a bad habit into a good one, and how we can strengthen our mental models of that kind of process to achieve our goals. And a brief little walk down the Power of Habit rabbit hole. He journeyed into this thing about discovering why we do what we do, because he was on assignment over in the Middle East, and he was kind of shadowing a military commander who was trying to secure a town that would routinely have violence erupt around the time when people would come to the market square to do business and to buy food and to buy supplies. And so one day, this colonel or the general, whoever was in charge, decided to move all the food vendors and the sellers onto these very small side streets. So the main square was virtually empty, but all the activity was happening on the side streets. And the amazing thing that happened was violence went down like almost 90-some%. There were no more attacks. And the general said to Charles Duhigg, Charles said, well, how could this be? And he said, it's because we're breaking the habit that people have of a certain time of day they go to a stall to buy food or they buy supplies, and we're moving that, we're changing their behavior. And so he took this lesson and he tried to move that forward, and he talked to scientists who study the brain and how we do things. My most fascinating takeaway from the book is that our behavior is made up with thousands of memorized things that we learn and we just put them in order, like wake up, hit the alarm clock, go to the bathroom, make your coffee. Those are all things the brain doesn't have to think about because we've done them before. And if you want to change that behavior, especially when it comes to something like weight loss, or in the case of Charles Duhigg, Tim and I were fascinated by the book because they actually looked at a lot of marketing scenarios. Do you remember the one where they talked about how they got Febreze to be more popular in households? Right. So his theory is that if you want to have a resolution succeed, you need to examine the habits that you have and break them and reform them. So that's the little catch-all there. So I think that to your earlier question of do I agree with everything, varying degrees of success can be achieved by doing this. It really depends on the person. I agree with a lot of what he says, most of it, but again, it comes down to the person's ability to, in fact, identify a habit, break it, and make a new one.
Now, how long ago did we read that book? 2012?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
How the heck did you remember that story about... Now, I read the book too. You remember? Did you reread the book recently?
No. But the book.
You remember that Middle East story?
Yeah. You remember it now too. That I bring it up, right?
I remember now that you bring it up, but I couldn't have pulled that out. You're crazy.
Yeah, everybody says this about my memory. It left an impression on me though, because that was his light bulb moment. So you know how earlier in the show we talked about, why don't we do a Trump pinata? Or why don't we do any of these stuff? So it's those light bulb moments that fascinate me. He observed that whole thing and thought, wow. The brain does a lot of things that's what it was. The brain does a lot of things on autopilot. How do we change that to be conscious of our behavior?
Okay. So what was his first? So the first take. So the overarching theme then was to break the habit, or how you break the habit by changing the behavior versus just saying you're going to do it, right?
Correct. And as Tim said way earlier, you can have a resolution and you want to keep it, but it's not about the desire to have the resolution. It's about a plan to make it happen. So an example would be you want to lose 15 pounds. The first thing you should do is probably go through your kitchen and anything that how we snack and we graze. Everybody does it. I'm not faulting anybody for it. You walk through the kitchen, there's something on the counter. That looks good. Well, to lose the weight and to change the habit, you have to either go through the kitchen and purge all those little snackable items that are within a hand's reach, and then replace them with, say, celery or carrots or fruits and vegetables. And that's the first step, is to recognize what you're doing and then adapt it, change it, and plan for it, right?
Right. So he says here, the key is to not just say you're going to do a goal, it's to make the plan, as John says. So he said, if I want to lose weight, it's bad to just say I want to lose weight. Or he said, you would say, I plan to lose 10 pounds by August, and I'm going to do that by exercising twice a week, and I'm going to stop eating cookies.
Exactly.
So that's the plan. How are you going to lose 10 pounds? So to just say I'm going to lose 10 pounds, well, how are you going to lose 10 pounds? Well, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by August, and I'm going to do it by exercising twice a week, and I'm going to stop eating sweets. So that's the plan. So the goal is great to have, but you can't reach your goal unless you have a plan. And that's where I think is where we do miss out a lot. If you say your goal is to, I want to read a book a month. A lot of people always say, I want to read more. Well, what's the plan to read more? Well, I'm going to read. Are you going to say, I'm going to try to read how many books, right? You would have to figure out, I'm going to try to read X amount of time a day or on the weekends or whatever you try to do. You have to put your plan together. And because I find myself falling into that too, I'll say I'm going to try to read more. It's nice to say, but if you don't plan and you don't carve out the time, you're not going to get it done, right? You're just going to fall into your old habits.
And to move a little bit off the Duhigg, this story here, to Tim's point, planning, for me at least, when I took my animation coursework, I would say I'm going to animate that. Well, there's steps to do that. You have to lay it out. You have to do in other words, this idea of writing down your roadmap to success for let's say it's changing an eating habit or losing weight. If you sat every Sunday night, for example, and you had an electronic calendar and you said and this is to your reading example too, if you said every day from 12 to 1:30, I'm going to read. I'm dedicating that time to read. We do it with going to the gym. We do it with seeing friends or seeing a movie. So we should be able to do it with this as well, as you map out that time. And while you may slide and you may not do it, at least you mentally put it down on paper or electronically and said, I want to do it at this point. And that's an important part of executing a plan, making it and then executing it.
Yeah, that's the big thread through all of this. He says you have to write it down. He talks about if we've also, a lot of people, he said, through this event, we've developed, if you've developed good habits, for instance, and if you want to maintain them when things go back to some sort of normalcy, you need to write them down, because if you write them down, you'll become more accountable. So write down what good habits you've developed and how you're going to maintain them and how you're going to keep them up. And if you write them down, you'll actually become more accountable. He says you have to literally write them down. So it's what John said. You've always been very good about that. You'll plan out a week and say, I'm going to carve out this much time to do exercise. I'm going to go visit the yoga studio at this time. I'm going to devote 4 hours to web development this time. I'm going to go visit so-and-so at this time and carve out. So if you do that and you stick to that, then you start developing good habits. You're better at that than I am. I waver.
No, you're good at it. No,
I'm not consistent.
You're good at
it. And the other thing you and I struggle with, I think, sometimes is when you have your own business. A lot of it, if one phone call could throw it all out the window. Sometimes we've had clients where we have a whole day planned for. I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. Yeah. The phone rings, and next thing you know, you're doing Z.
You're putting out a fire. That's when the fire brigade has to go out. I would say you're actually really good at planning. Here's in a different article, not the one we're looking at now. Charles Duhigg did say in a recent piece in the Atlantic, he was quoted because someone said to him, "What takes you off the plan, or what takes most people off the plan?" He actually said the internet is not your friend. So you sit down and you say to yourself, "I'm going to go on CNN and check out a headline in the New York Times just so I can see what's going on." Your one little errand to check out the front page ends up costing you 20 to 25 minutes, maybe even longer, because you got absorbed, click, 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 and next thing you know, you're doing something else. So I try to limit my visit to news sites and stuff like that as much as possible. And if you do have it on paper, the problem with the event, one of the big problems is that we don't leave, like, part of my day was centered around going to things. Like, as you mentioned, I would once a week I would try to see a peer of mine for lunch. And it was the getting there and the coming home. I had to factor in the half-hour train ride, pick the restaurant. You know, there's a whole thing. Now it's just this amorphous kind of, what are we doing? What day is it? What century is it?
Have there been days you haven't left the house?
Yeah. And I really try to get out every single day to be outside in the fresh air for a little while, just to... Sometimes, and I said this to friends over the weekend, I will get on the train and go down to 34th Street, not far from where our studio used to be, and purposely walk up. I'd choose an avenue, 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, and walk up all the way to the park and a little bit further and just see what the city looks like and, you know, see people doing their stuff and then take the train home. And it clears your head like nothing, because you're not...
What does it look like for people that think it's a ghost town?
There are parts of the city that are very quiet. It's no longer a ghost town, but quiet. And in fact, where we used to be at Sirius XM in Midtown, like, for example, remember every time the tree was put up at holiday time, all our coworkers at Sirius would be like, "Oh my God, the crowds are terrible." That's the kind of sad part. Midtown, where Rock Center is and some of these big office buildings, it's quieter because it's not residential. It's really office driven, and all those delis and shops and stores that served all the people in the offices, they're all closed or struggling. And then you go to an area that's more residential, like the Upper West Side or where we live. People are out, kids are playing, dogs are getting walked. So it's a patchwork.
I wonder if the little Japanese restaurant's still open that we used to like. Remember that place, that $5, the bowl of rice and
that was the
chicken.
That was the ramen shop, right? I used to love that.
Yeah, but that little hole in the wall right here.
Literally right down the block. I love that. In fact, there's a ramen shop up by us on this avenue called Bennett Avenue, and we just ordered ramen the other night. And one of those great meals that you actually introduced me to, the whole bowl thing, because there was a name for that. It was the chicken and the egg in there. What's it?
Yeah, udon. It was
That's an udon bowl. Yeah. That's right. So there you go, folks. I would definitely pick up or research Charles Duhigg and look for The Power of Habit. In fact, if you buy the book, it's broken into 3 sections. The very first section is the most important part of the book. The other 2 are actually simply examples of what he talks about in the first one. But it's well worth a read. It changed my perspective on habit forming and how to get things done, as you can tell, because I still remember the book. So there you go. It's not a bad way to start 2021. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up there. We want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for spending time with Tim and I. Go to focusgroupradio.com and check out all our media, including our podcast Unbuttoned, TFG Unbuttoned, which airs on Tuesday or drops on Tuesdays. That's there, plus this in video form and audio form, the Focus Group. And remember, don't text and drive, arrive alive. And until further notice, mask up and stay safe. And we'll see you in the new week.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.